Welcome back, folks. My name is Meg Kruger. I'm the content specialist here at Pioneer. Thanks so much for joining us again for another one of our Groundskeeper Chats. Today we're joined by Rick Perruzzi. We're going to be talking Top Dressing 101. Rick, if you want to introduce yourself, give us a little background, that's a great place to start.
Sure. Meg, nice to meet you. Thanks for having me on. My name is Rick Perruzzi. I'm the outdoor facilities manager for athletic fields here in the city of South Portland within the Parks and Recreation Department. I've been with this department since 1998 full time, worked seasonally prior to that while going through college. I'm kind of a self-described, self-taught idiot, like a lot of us in the industry who have a passion for doing what we do out on the fields as former athletes, and it's a great way to kind of give back while enjoying what we're doing at the same time. I currently oversee a 150-acre recreation complex here in the city of South Portland. Geographically, for folks that aren't familiar with Maine, we're obviously right next to Portland, but about 9 miles north of Boston, so coastal town. And so we have that facility as well as 2 middle school sites and a high school facility that we manage as well. We currently have about 1.2 million square feet of irrigated sports fields that we manage at a higher level than some of the non-irrigated surfaces, just because we can't always rely on Mother Nature. So yeah, kind of in a nutshell, that's what we're doing. I have a crew of anywhere between 4 and 6 folks, depending on time of year. Half of those are full-time and the other half are seasonals. So, I've had that question before and some others done, and obviously there's a lot of different, constraints that go into it, resources, fund, do they have the time to do it? Do they have the equipment to do it? For years, we were just doing some of our higher profile fields that get a lot more use and specific to what activity is taking place on it. And field hockey is probably the easiest thing to kind of relate to folks that may be considering whether or not they need to top dress fields. In my opinion, all fields should be top dressed at some point throughout the season. For us specifically in the city of South Portland, 3.5 years ago, they instituted a pesticide ordinance, which meant that no chemical pesticides were to be applied on not just any public areas, but even private lawns. Obviously, we've adhered to it, because we are public servants, and we have to follow the ordinances. The ironic part of that ordinance is that we were able to secure funding to get equipment, so we'd be more efficient in doing the culture necessary, not just from an organic field process, but also just turf 101. When you're managing over 1 million square feet of turf, to have a small aerator to aerate 70,000 square feet is going to take you 8 to 10 hours. Now we're able to turn a field around in about an hour and a half, 2 hours. And we got a proper size top dresser. We actually got a unit that can suck up all that organic matter after we either pull cores with our aerator, or we use a verticarder, which is kind of basically dethatching the fields. So our turnaround time per field has decreased significantly, which has allowed us to increase the scope of what we're actually doing culturally, and top dressing being one of those. And as I said, with that ordinance, not only did we secure funding for capital equipment, but we also were able to get an increase in some of the line items within the budget to be able to do more of these things. Just to kind of give folks out there an idea of what we're doing, we're spending roughly anywhere between $20,000 and $22,000 a year in top dressing. That's about 360 cubic yards of top dressing that we're using every year. A lot of that depends on what kind of year we're having. If we're having an ideal perfect year, then we're going to be close to that number. The last couple of years, where we've had some struggles with the weather, that number's been a little bit lower in terms of the amount that we've put out. But that's kind of what we shoot for.
So for a crew or a facility that may be battling budget, like you kind of touched on before, maybe if it's a matter of timing or just expenditure, if that's a word, what are some, best practice or turf tips that you could offer for somebody that maybe doesn't have the bandwidth or the budget to be doing this on all their fields or every, after every challenge on the turf?
Yep. I think the easiest way, and it's kind of the way we approached it years ago, when we kind of started out to be viewed as more professionals than just, guys that were mowing grass and painting lines. We had only one area, before this facility was built, we only had one irrigated field in the city, and that was the stadium football field. So that's kind of where, that was our showcase field. That was the one field where we were going to put most of our resources into. Not just manpower, but obviously financially as well, because not only did it take a lot, had a lot of use on it. At one point, we were like 55 of scheduled events in like 40 days on the field. So for us to be able to showcase that field and show what happens when you put the correct resources and correct cultural practices into those specific fields. And so you're able to show your decision makers and your finance folks, like, look, this is what I can do with this. If you give me a little bit more, I'm going to be able to expand this, and it's going to benefit more user groups. Because ultimately, at the end of the day, not only are we looking to grow healthy fields and healthy turf grasses, we're also concerned about safety and playability. And I mean, you can see fields that look great from a distance, but if you're walking on top of them and they're as hard as concrete, there aren't a lot of players that are going to want to be tackled or play on those fields, because they could prevent or start the increase of injury as the athletes continue to play on those fields. So there's a lot of different factors that go into it, but definitely I would say for low budget municipalities and facilities, try to pick one field, really show what you can do with that. Be proactive. Don't be afraid to take risks. If you're not making mistakes, you're not learning. None of us have always gotten it right. And all you can ask yourself at the end of the day, if you do make a mistake, is, did I learn anything? And how do we improve on that and go forward?
Wow, that is great insight. I definitely haven't had anyone frame it that way before. So I think that's really useful. In something that, if somebody has multiple fields or a larger facility, but the budget is not, there, I think that's great advice to just, show them the guinea pig field almost, and show them what can be done when money is invested into those fields. So that's awesome. Next question I have for you is, how did you guys develop a top dressing mix that you believe has been successful for your field? What resources did you use, and how did you kind of come across one that, has proven to be fruitful for your field?
Yep. So, like I said, I got into this industry because I had a passion for what I was doing as a seasonal employee. And, once I got a few years under my belt as a full-time employee, and obviously being part of STMA, Sports Turf Managers Association, just opened up, a plethora of information and resources and networking that I never knew existed. So, I mean, we started off in the early days of, going down to the local, sand pit, or hitting up a big contractor and getting mason sand. Mason sand is relatively clean, but not 100% free of, large size stones and any foreign matter. And I can remember when we were doing our stadium fields back in the mid 90s, we would walk around and we were finding stones that big that made it through, the screening process or got picked up in the yard by the bucket loader. From there, we started doing some compost top dressing, straight compost. We found that beneficial, especially when we were either doing a blank seeding or on a brand new field that had no turfgrass coverage on it. That obviously kept the moisture down, gave it a little bit of fertility, and we did a lot with that for a few years. As the facility here kind of matured, that's when we started kind of looking at, okay, let's start looking at, how do we improve ball roll and keep the surface as smooth as possible. And as I said, being part of the STMA and having a huge network there of talking to different turf managers and different, vendors and contractors on, hey, what are you using? We found a mix down in Massachusetts. It's actually an 80-20 sand super peat mix. So obviously the sand is there to help smooth the field out, but also improve ball roll. And there's a little bit of organic matter in there as well to kind of, give the turf a kind of kick in the pants, so to speak. Because any cultural practices that you're doing, if you're doing an aeration or verticutting prior to top dressing, I mean, you're putting stress on that field. And with a little bit of organics in there, whether or not you're fertilizing prior, before, or during, you got to help that turf recover from the stress that you put on it. And it kind of sounds, it's a double-edged sword to an extent, but you are helping that turf recover, by doing some of these processes. So we found that that's worked really well for us. It's, as I said, it's not heavy and the compost is extremely fine. We've seen no effects from playability or safety by having that on there. Most folks don't even know that it's even there because there's 80% sand in that mix. And we've been extremely happy with it. We've never had an issue with the screening process or an increase of weed seed. I mean, the way they process the sand, it's pretty clean when we get it. And getting it from Massachusetts, the cost to get it up here, calling around to different vendors, they're right in the ballpark. And I'm not going to say you don't want to broaden your horizons and see what else is out there, but at this point in time, we found a product that works really well for us. And my turf guys love it. So.
And what should somebody who maybe is trying top dressing out for the first time, or they haven't done it in a long time, what are some warnings that you would give them if this is one of the first times they're going to take a shot at it?
Yeah, I think it goes back to what I was saying earlier about using mason sand. You got to know what the product is. You have to do your homework. You have to make phone calls. If I'm in the town next to you and I call you up and I say, hey, Meg, what are you using? Go over and check it out, or go to the yard and see what it is and ask folks that may have used it or are using it and pick their brains. And, that's really the best way to do it. And it's nothing against, salespeople. I mean, they're always going to tell you their product is good. But at the end of the day, especially working for a municipality, it isn't my money I'm playing with. I'm using the taxpayers' money. So I have to get the most bang for my buck. And, by relying on those resources of the networking in the greater New England area and across the country, to find out what other folks are doing and what they're using, you got to pick up the phone. And I haven't met anybody in the industry yet that hasn't returned a phone call or an email to get information or help somebody out who's looking for insight on something. So from a leveling standpoint, I mean, obviously you're adding something in there that's going to help smooth the surface. And in terms of, the maintenance guys, when they're out there mowing, and we've all seen it, mower decks are kind of jumping up and down, which could show the field there might be some unevenness in the field. Putting a top dressing layer out there, multiple times over a period of time will help smooth that surface out. And, those decks aren't going to want to jump up and down. So you're going to get a much better cut on the field, whether you're using a reel or rotary mower. We like it for the purposes that if we do an overseeding, That gives us a little bit of a covering over that seed. Obviously, it's not going to hold as much moisture as, say, a compost would, but it does keep a little bit of moisture down there, protects the seed a little bit. The other thing that it does is it actually, in my opinion, and again, I'm kind of a self-taught person in the industry, it, in a way, by top dressing, and we've done it as early as 10 to 14 days prior to a season, it actually gives the plant a little bit of protection. We actually, last year, we had the opportunity to top dress our field hockey field in the middle of the season. We just went out and top dressed and broomed it in, and the ball was like on a pool table. Yeah, I heard the girls, they couldn't believe how fast the field was, and they loved it. And, you know, it also protects the crown of the plant because it provides an interface between the player's cleats and the crown of the plant, which is obviously going to be damaged when you know, the activity is actually taking place. So in that, the other part of it is that you're helping, you know, with reducing compaction. Particle size is important. Obviously, you don't want to add a lot of big particles in there. And that's where it comes down to your homework of finding out what are the different particle sizes within that top dressing mix. Sort of like any other type of engineered soil, technology has allowed us to really look and see what the products are that we're putting down on our fields, whether it's a soil profile, whether it's a top dressing mix, whether it's an infield material. The demand for information and the improvement of technology and the blending of these different types of materials have really taken us to, and that's a really fun part of being part of the industry in the last 10 years, is seeing all these new different products come out that are engineered because of the demands that longtime turf managers have thought about, and now those ideas and realizations are coming true.